Inception is directed by Christopher Nolan and it stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ellen Page, Ken Watanabe, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Marion Cotillard, and also Michael Caine. And even though I will be reviewing Dark Knight Rises and Interstellar to sort of complete my series of Nolan reviews, I feel like this video marks the end of the unofficial my top 3 favorite films of all time trilogy that began with The Prestige and then The Dark Knight. Now we have Inception. Now this film has been out for 7 years and it's by far one of the most popular and widely recognized and most well-known films to ever have been made. Definitely one of the most popular of the decade, and so this entire review will contain spoilers, and also I'll have a quick warning for you guys here. Throughout the review I will say the words complex and complexity a lot. So much that you could play a drinking game out of it. Maybe you take a shot of alcohol whenever I say complex or complexity. If you do decide to play the game, by the end of the review, I have to warn you, you may find yourself getting arrested for drunk driving a stolen taxi into a supermarket and injuring 3 innocent people, because I will be saying it a lot. Now this review will be very much in the same style as my review for The Dark Knight, in that I just kind of go through what I really like about the film, sort of in chronological order, all sort of spoilers. I'm not going to hold back because I really want to talk about this film, because it is, you know, in my top 3 favorite films of all time. So let's just start with the opening scene, which is not only one of my favorite opening scenes or one of my favorite scenes in a Nolan film, but it is, in my opinion, the best looking Nolan scene from a cinematography point of view, because I think the entire scene gives off a very slick and stylish, almost Bond-esque vibe to it. And I know for a fact that On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is one of Chris Nolan's favourite Bond films, played a big part sort of as an inspiration to the film. And you know, the whole snow fortress bit in the third act, that is sort of inspired by On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Nolan has said countless times that he is a fan of Bond, he wants to direct Bond, and so I feel like this was sort of his little sort of attempt at making a Bond film, you know. It definitely has a lot of references to Bond. For example, the gun that Marion Cotillard uses right here is a Walther PPK to my knowledge, which is obviously the gun that James Bond is known for using. I just really love the style of this scene, because most Nolan films, you know, they have good cinematography, but it really isn't anything like mind-blowing like a David Fincher film or a Sam Mendes film. But with this scene, I feel like it really puts cinematography Wally Pfister, I don't know how to say his name, but it really uses his skills as a cinematographer, because the guy is incredibly talented, and you see that talent in a scene like this. It just looks great. And obviously you have this bit. With, like, I mean, that's just, like, you know, that's just cinematic gold. Also, most films, pretty much all of them, whether they're very complex, very simple, they always start off relatively straightforward. You know, they show you the characters, what they're like, the setting. But Inception takes a big risk in having a very, very complex opening. You know, it's not something you would normally see even in a Nolan film, in my opinion. And I think this is a big risk, and it's a big risk that paid off, because this sort of opening segment really does such a great job of not only sort of foreshadowing the things to come, you know, like the fact that the opening is sort of a dream within a dream, and obviously the mission, you know, they have to do a dream within a dream within a dream or whatever, but also it shows you the characters. It gives you an idea of what this film is going to be like. It sets the tone. But unlike most movies that do that in a very simple, straightforward way, this film goes straight and just dives straight into the complexity of the film. And that's something I really admire, and like I said, it's a risk that really, really paid off. I think a big complaint that most people have with this film is that you don't really understand what's going on, you know, within the first watching, and it's a film that you need to watch multiple times to understand, to fully understand. I disagree with that. I think if you watch Inception for the first time and you pay proper attention, you will get the gist. You will understand sort of what's going on. But I feel like Inception isn't a film that needs to be watched multiple times to fully understand. It is a film that needs to be watched multiple times to fully appreciate. Because I've seen the film 9 times. And I wouldn't have picked up the fact that Marion Cotillard was using a gun, a Walther PPK. This is, again, just like The Prestige, just like The Dark Knight, this is a film that is actually rewarding after every time you rewatch it, because you always pick up something new. You always see the film from a different perspective. And you know, that's something that's very rare with films nowadays. And so I do think that if you keep watching this film, you will like it more, you will appreciate it more, and I think that is a rare quality in a film. But not to take away from the fact that seeing it for the first time is great, because it is, it's like an experience like no other. I'm just saying that the more times you watch it, I think the better it will be, and the more you'll enjoy it, the more you'll appreciate it. And also my biggest problem with Nolan's other film, Memento, is that the fact that it is a very, very complex story. Everyone knows that, nobody's going to disagree. But at some points it gets to a point where it's so confusing that you just kind of like, it just kind of feels pretentious and full of itself. That's my only problem with Memento, which I think is a near perfect film. But with Inception, it has these complex moments, right? Nobody's gonna argue, but it kind of balances it out with great action scenes, great acting, great dialogue, great characters. And so it doesn't feel pretentious. And it makes it rewatchable, it makes it sort of fun, right? Because one of the things I love most about this film is that it is a very thought-provoking film that deals with a lot of different themes and subject matters through very complex means. But it never feels pretentious. It actually has a ton of fun. Like I said, great action scenes. I'll get into the action a little bit later. Great dialogue, get into that a little bit later as well. But it just never feels like, ooh, you know, this is a pretentious film. Now let's talk about the action scenes and how they are directed. Obviously, we all know that Nolan is someone who very much is sort of a purist, you know. All of his films are shot on film, and he tries to utilize as many practical effects as possible. And that is very evident in this film, especially the action scenes. The big one, obviously, is the corridor sequence. All the other action scenes are good, but the corridor sequence is kind of the showstopper. And, you know, if you've seen the behind the scenes of how that was crafted, the amount of manpower and the amount of just dedication that went into the crafting of that scene, and then you'll probably understand why it's one of the greatest action set pieces ever put to film. This is an incredible action scene. This is what action scenes should be like. Also, another thing I love so much about this film is just how focused it is, because you have so many different characters, you have so many different subplots and different character arcs, and you know, there's a lot going on. You know, they have a dream within a dream within a dream, but it never loses its focus. It knows exactly what it's doing, because deep down, this film is very much Dom Cobb's journey, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio's character. It's his emotional arc, it's his journey as a character. All the other characters are just kind of supporting him, trying to get him there to that point. And the film never forgets that. That's one of the things I love so much about all of Nolan's films, because even though there's so much going on in the background, the films, especially Inception, never forget what it's trying to do in terms of characters, in terms of story. Never gets distracted, never meanders. And that's why I love Nolan as a director so much, is because he creates stories that are so focused and you really get sucked into it, you know? Now let's talk about the acting. Right, I haven't really covered that. Leonardo DiCaprio in this film is obviously great. He's Leonardo DiCaprio. He gives Oscar-worthy performances all the time. This is yet another great performance from him, but it's not his best. But in this film, he's great. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, again, great. Ellen Page, I think, is a very important character, really great performance. And I say she's an important character because I feel like she's sort of our entry point into the film. She's kind of new, just like the audience, and whatever she's learning, the audience is learning, you know? And she's the character you really relate to the most, and I think that's probably why she's so vital to the film. Tom Hardy, great performance, very charismatic as always. I want to talk about Marion Cotillard, who I think is also very good in the film, but after seeing a film 9 times, she became kind of annoying, and I just didn't really like her character, but I think that is kind of what they were trying to go for, though, to make a character kind of feel like the opposition. She's good, but like, again, very annoying character. Also, Cillian Murphy, who I just feel like is like one of the most underrated aspects of a Nolan film, is great. In fact, the scene at the end, you know, when he meets his dad and then he pulls out like the little windmill thing, like it almost brought me to tears. I absolutely love that scene, and Cillian Murphy's so great in this film. All the performances are great. Ken Watanabe, it's all great. Now, another complaint that people have had with this film is the fact that it's so heavy on exposition. And my response to that would be that, well, you know, when you have a film that is this complex, that has to deal with so many different things, you kind of have to have a little bit of exposition. I mean, it's not like exposition is a bad thing, and the exposition that they have in this film, it is written very well. It's not like Suicide Squad, you know, like, here comes Slipknot, the man who can climb anything. This is Katana, she's got my back. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps souls of its victims. You know, you don't get any of that. This is like good dialogue, good exposition. It's not Suicide Squad. And you know, Nolan is very famous for his intercutting, you know, I talked about in Prestige and The Dark Knight as well. He's very famous for sort of intercutting different scenes, and I feel like this is the film where he gets to showcase that the most, because obviously you have the different dream layers, you know, dream within a dream within a dream. And especially towards the end, this is when the editing becomes really important, because not only do you have to keep up the excitement and the intensity, you know, you have to edit so that you can see the effect that one layer of the dream has on the other without making it confusing. And only someone like Nolan and only his team could really accomplish something like that. And Hans Zimmer's score, man, just comes in, sends chills down my spine every time. And fun fact, you know, the piece at the end called Time, that's become really popular. If you listen to that, and you watch the film from the beginning, you'll actually sort of pick up hints of that score throughout the film. That's another thing you notice after about your 7th or 8th watch of the film. So yeah. Also, I have to talk about the ending, which is probably one of the most well-known and famous, sort of most debated endings of all time. You know, is Leonardo DiCaprio still dreaming? Is he in the real world? And Nolan has come out and said, you know, what his view on this is, and I definitely agree with him in the fact that he has said that it doesn't really matter. His character, Cobb, has gotten to where he is. His sole purpose as a character in this film is to get back to his children, and he has gotten back to his children. He has completed everything he has set out to do in this film. And so his character arc is finished, and it really doesn't matter whether or not he's in a dream or he's alive. He has gotten to where he wants to be. This review is nearly done. All I need to do is give my final thoughts and give the grade. I don't need to be here. I can just, you know, voice over the rest of this thing if I wanted to, but I'm not. I'm going to finish this review because, well, you know, I want to, I guess. And so I think you get what I mean in the fact that whether he's in a dream or he's, you know, in the real world, his character arc is finished. It's complete. The story is complete. And so it doesn't really matter. Obviously, I would like him to be in the real world because, you know, everyone does. But it doesn't really matter in the end, guys. So my final thoughts on the film. Inception is, I feel like, a milestone in cinema. This film, how great it is, can't be put into one review. It really can't. It's a film that is so important to films. So many films have tried to be like it. So many films have taken inspiration from it. Just like 2001, just like Godfather, just like Shawshank. This is a film that has really defined a generation of films. It revolutionized the way films were directed, the way films were scored, the way films were edited, the way action scenes were filmed, the way trailers were made. Inception really is a milestone in cinema, and the biggest compliment that I can give this film is that it is part of that small group of films that made me want to make movies. That's how important this film is to me, and I think a lot of people as well. And for that reason, I'm going to give Inception an obvious A+. Guys, thank you as always for watching. Please stay tuned for my reviews for Dark Knight Rises and Interstellar. Hopefully I'll get around to doing those real soon. Obviously we have Game of Thrones coming out tomorrow. But anyway guys, thank you as always for watching. Thank you.